Hello to everyone. When borders overcome humanity, women and children at the center of the refugee crisis. When borders overcome humanity, people fleeing war, oppression, poverty, and displacement face walls. Detention, expulsion, and deprivation instead of security and protection. Refugee status is not a human choice, but a consequence of war, occupation, tyranny, inequality, poverty, environmental crisis, and policies that have deprived millions of people of the right to live life in their own land. In the meantime, women and children pay the most for this crisis. They are not only victims of war and displacement, but also face gender based violence, human trafficking, exploitation, poverty, deprivation of education and health services, and a future filled with uncertainty and insecurity on the path to asylum. The new EU policies in restricting the right to asylum, transferring refugees to third countries, establishing offshore detention centers, and undermining the right to a fair trial are a clear example of the dominance of borders over humanity. Instead of addressing the roots of war, poverty, and displacement, these policies place their consequences on the shoulders of the most vulnerable people. Women, meanwhile, bear the brunt of the burden of family, survival, and protection, while children lose years of growth, education, and security in camps, detention centers, and prolonged situations of uncertainty. The disenfranchisement of refugee women is not only a result of war and displacement, but also the intersection of gender discrimination, class inequality, and restrictive immigration policies that expose them to multiple forms of violence and deprivation. Historically, refugees have mainly come from working class, and lower class backgrounds, those who have neither the capital for safe migration nor the possibility of quickly rebuilding their lives. Years of uncertainty, deprivation of work, education, and social security spread despair, hopelessness, and the sense of hopelessness, and reproduce the cycle of poverty and inequality in subsequent generations. From this perspective, the refugee crisis is not simply a migration issue, but a direct reflection of the unequal political and economic structures in the contemporary world. At the same time, the growth of far right movements and the spread of racist and uh, xenophobic, xenophobic discourses in Europe uh, present refugees not as victims of war and inequality, but as a threat to security and the economy. This inversion of reality has paved the way for the normalization of policies that reduce the right to asylum from a fundamental human right to a political privilege and weaken the responsibility of governments to protect displaced people. The International Council of Women's Solidarity believes that defending the right to asylum is defending fundamental human rights and upholding universal human values. We call for an end to restrictive and inhuman policies, for refugees to have access to a fair trial, for special protection for women and children, for the right to education, health, security, and work, and for the international community to effectively address the root causes of war, oppression, poverty, inequality, and displacement. Experience has shown that walls don't stop war, nor do they eliminate poverty, nor do they create sustainable security. True security lies in peace, justice, equality, respect for human rights, and solidarity among nations. Defending the rights of refugees, especially women and children, is defending human dignity because whenever borders overcome humanity, women and children are the first victims, and ultimately, the real losers will be all of humanity. International Women's Solidarity Council. Till next text and video. Bye.